This is DME TV. I'm Ambrish Saxena and you are watching the program DME Dialogue. This is a program where we invite distinguished people who would have made some significant contribution in their own walk of life to speak on some pertinent issues and to enlighten viewers on relevant aspects. So today we have SUBHOMOY Bhattacharjee with us, who is a consulting editor in Business Standard, who has authored many books, and he has a long career to his credit, and lot of he is basically in the domain of spreading knowledge on relevant issues and how some improvement can be brought in the society. SUBHOMOY, welcome to DME TV and in DME Dialogue, and we would like to know a lot of things today as part of this program. So to begin with, firstly, we would like to know as to how you started your career in journalism, whether there was something planning behind that or it something happened like this. How did you plan your career, your education, if you can give some insight to our viewers?
Thanks, Ambrish, for calling me over. I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity to have a chat with you, and very impressive looking studio. Well, you know, plan, of course, I mean, certain people, I mean, we wouldn't want to plan, but at the stage of Indian economy that we were at the time, there wasn't really much that you could plan, in the sense that I first went into the civil services, but from there, after some years, I decided to take move out into journalism. Why was it so? Is there anything wrong with civil service? No. I admire and I respect the people who are there in the civil service. I think they do a brilliant job, except that I realized that that's an administrative job. I don't think that I was a particularly suitable guy for doing an administrative job. So I decided that, you know, you got to choose what you want to do pretty early on in your life, and therefore I made the decision that I'll rather try to switch to try to be a journalist. Whether I'll work it out or not, I wasn't sure, but I said that you got to try.
Yeah, but then you cleared the civil services examination, you were in service for some years. So how it happened that you, I mean, this thought came to your mind that this is something which you should quit and should take up something else which is more close to your heart? Because, I mean, leaving civil services is not an easy decision, though nowadays a lot of people are quitting civil services. And so how this happened actually?
You know, basically, it's not that difficult. I mean, now when I look at it after so many years, one was that, yes, to answer your question, Ambrish, initial stage, in the college also I used to write for things, and I found it an interesting idea. When I went into civil services, I realized, as I said, that this is a pure play administrative role, which is very good. But I realized that I'm not somebody who is very comfortable doing it. And this has got nothing to do with who's the administrator, like who's the minister or what is the thing. It's simply that this is a role which I didn't think I was very comfortable with. And there will be, I mean, I suppose in everybody's life, there comes a stage when you have to make some choices. And I said, fine, fair enough, I will move on into journalism and let me see how well equipped I am. After all, journalism or any field for that matter, people work because they get I mean, after all, it's people. It's not, till now, it wasn't robots who were working. So it was an easy, I mean, to that extent, it was an easy decision. In fact, in my batch, out of 32 from us in our batch in the information service, 6 quit for various reasons. So I wasn't the only one. But yes, at different times and different opportunities, but more or less around the same time.
So when you decided to join journalism, so how it did happen that you decided to come to business journalism particularly?
Oh, that part wasn't difficult. Because I was a student of economics and I loved the subject, it was clear that if I'm going to do journalism, I will be doing business journalism. That was the only area which I knew, or rather I thought I had some advantage to start with. So that part wasn't ever in doubt. The choice was about whether to make the change or not. And as I said that, you know, it really is speaking, it's not that difficult to change. If you don't sit too much by, you know, stuff like I have to have safety in life, I have to have this thing, you know, people get overwhelmed often, from what I get your question is, by by concerns about to thinking themselves as responsible for too many things. And frankly speaking, that's something that we need not bother us too much. Once that starts happening, then you lose your ability. I mean, I would lose my ability to really decide on something. The world doesn't change because of my change. The world doesn't change because I would still decide to be in civil service. So frankly speaking, it's a question of doing a career well, and people can do it. It's a question of having the feel that whenever you take anything, you got to have the confidence. Let me give an example. A few years ago, I decided that this paragliding thing is a very good idea. So I mean, lots of people do, and obviously I didn't have any experience, but I was there in near Nainital, and they do this paragliding. So I told this guy that I would like to try it out, and obviously it was new. So there was a queue, and in the queue they said like, who would like to come first? So I said, I'd like to come first. The reason is that it's no point waiting and thinking, oh my God, that guy is going, no matter how, I mean, I wonder how scared he is. Just don't wait. Move to be the first one. So because I was the first one, I moved on. I didn't know. Obviously, I felt cramped. I mean, there was a, when the flight sort of takes on, you are suddenly away from the hill, and you suddenly find there's nothing underneath you, and you're floating. There is a certain constriction in your stomach. You do feel uncomfortable, but that was very momentary. And after that, that feel that the thing when it took off, it was beautiful, and you were like I was soaring over the entire Nainital Valley, and then and in fact it ended rather too soon. I mean, they gradually they brought us down. So I went back for a few more later on, and I like doing it.
So you have been enjoying that feeling of elevation in journalism till now?
Not elevation, I would say, yeah, you can say it broadly. What I think is that if you, first of all, take a chance when the opportunity comes along, and don't wait to measure out the pros and cons. I mean, I know that in that line, quite a few people, they sort of thought about it. They kept on looking at people taking off. Some got scared and said, I don't want to take this chance anymore. So that wait is actually a bad thing to do. Just move on, and things will settle out. I mean, what would have happened? At best, the thing would have crashed. But then you knew it wouldn't crash because they were with safety nets, with harness. So life is actually, I mean, the opportunities are much more than the risks that we think come up to us.
And since economy is a subject, I mean, wherein every now and then something or the other is happening, things are not always very stagnant or very stable, whether it's in India or in other part of the world. So for the last, say for 11 years, I mean, since the time the recession started in the world, the impact was found in India. How do you look at the global economy in 2019, particularly in view of the developments which have happened during the past one decade?
On this we can go on for a few hours. It's a huge thing, and coming from you, I mean, obviously you have also studied it well, so I wouldn't like to give flippant answer.
Any such answer which can enlighten our viewers, particularly on this aspect?
One of the things, in fact, on a slight personal note again, one of the things that I have never been embarrassed is to go and ask someone, how is this happening? Right from the beginning of my career, that's one thing I can be very proud of, that if I didn't know a subject, I never had a problem going to a subject expert to say that, will you please teach me, how is this done? And I felt that often that was very good, because it helped me to understand rather than sitting around with a wrong idea which I had no chance of clearing up. And journalism gives you that wonderful opportunity to be able to learn from others, that what is it that's happening. So anybody, whether it's a politician, whether it's a bureaucrat, whether it's university professors like you, I'd always learn, and that was great. But to come down to specifics of what's happening, in the 21st century, what's happening is, till, see, the 19th century was a period when human beings moved out from the fields to use machines for the first time, the industrial revolution that started. In the 20th century, that industrial revolution got even more better, deeper, with the use of electricity in the first phase, in the first half, and the second half the use of electronics to use machines. That made people much more faster. What is now happening is that machining system is now turning inwards and making a lot of human endeavor useless. There is not that much requirement for human endeavors in lots of activities. For instance, today it is possible to have a steel plant picking up ore from a mine, from an iron ore mine. The iron ore will be mined by robots. The iron ore is picked up by trains, supplied to the steel mills, where the Bessemer process converts the steel and produces more steel to produce robots who will go back to work in the mines. Now, where is the role of human beings in all this? Even if there will be very few human beings who will be calculating and measuring, and very soon even their roles will go off, because the machines will be able to, the robots will be able to calculate with much more precision how much iron ore is required and where to mine, and they will also know the safety factor of the mines much better. This is the world economy that is developing gradually. It is a world where there is a super sense of specialization, and in that sort of a specialization world, the role of companies is getting upside down, it is getting inverted. So, so basically when we look at the world economy in 2019, one of the things that is coming up is that there would be a recession in US economy was not uncertain. I mean, it had had a long period of boom. So, there was a downturn bound to come. That the downturn is coming also with the phasing out of people from unemployment, phasing out of people from employment is what is the scary part. And frankly speaking, if you say if there is a clear answer to how it can be handled, no, there isn't. Can we do it by pushing in more capital? Well, actually no, because there is already enough capital going around. So, what are the options that can be done or taken on to create enclaves for human beings to work? It's something that needs it's a new economy that's coming up. In that new economy, the sort of work that is required is often something that human beings are not skilled to do. For instance, the sort of work that you are doing, where you are teaching students one-to-one, we need more such people. So, there is a need for that, but is the economy producing those sort of people? Well, not. So, there is.
But if I can ask you more precisely, the kind of things which are happening, particularly for last 1 year or so, the conflicts between one country and another country, wherein one country is wanted an edge over the other, wants to rule economically, or the trade war which is happening between different countries, or the economic grouping or alignments which are happening. So, these are the things which are mostly man-made, or wherein your monopolistic attitude dominates on your business decisions, and you want to subvert the other country by waging a trade war. So, what kind of impact do you see of these kind of things on the world economy?
Well, again, the companies today are globalized. The countries are not globalized. No country, no company today, any major company, even our PSUs are globalized. They are spread across the world. Their value chains are across the world. So, no company wants a war. No company wants a sanctions. Sanctions also another sort of a war. So, no company wants that. Global financial capitals, they don't want a war because they feel the situation gets distracted. But as I said, all of this is happening to a particular set of individuals, particular set of the world section of the world economy who are benefiting. There is a large part which feels that they are not benefiting or not benefiting adequately enough. It is these people who are then pushing up leaders who are pursuing an isolationist agenda. What you just talked about, all the things are basically these isolationist agenda coming up, basically saying that we don't want this. So, at one level you have got a Facebook or a Google which is absolutely for globalization.
This means these issues are less economic and is more political in nature.
Well, ultimately everything starts from being an economic issue, but the point is that the working of the world economy is creating a sense of alienation, and that alienation has got nothing to do with the Marxian system of alienation. It is of labor versus labor. It is not capital versus labor alienation which Marx used to talk about. capital does not even matter in this world economy. It is the labor versus labor alienation. So, the labor in Facebook, they would want globalization. The labor in, say, a taxi company would want localization. How do you reconcile these two? It is asking for political response, which frankly very few political parties in the world are equipped to handle, because they were brought up on the concept of labor versus capital fight.
So what is your take on this? I mean, globalization versus localization?
Well, I would say that essentially what's happening is that the need, globalization itself is creating its own answers. For instance, people are being stopped from moving across borders. India would love it if Indian people can be allowed to move across borders, take up more jobs in different countries. They are specialized people, they are highly skilled people. But what's happening is that the globalization is now creating opportunities for people to sit here and to provide that sort of a service. A doctor can provide a surgical service by sitting here. A medical transcription service can be provided by sitting here. So those responses are coming up. Once those responses stabilize and those companies come up, and then larger number of people will see that the benefit of globalization is not necessarily happening in, say, Tokyo or in Washington or New York City. It's happening in my own city, where there are companies coming up providing services to a far off company. Then people will start responding very fast. Then people will start getting the benefits. One way BPO was of that sort, but we need more of that scale where, not just the lower value add, but even the most sophisticated value add can be done long distance.
So you are putting more primacy or more importance to the human factor than the capital. But then any economy, including India, any developing country is looking for capital basically for the purpose of development. If I can quote the recent example, yesterday in the cabinet meeting, the Indian government is looking for more and more FDI. Yesterday only in the coal mining sector, 100% FDI was introduced. Even in the retail sector, even for FII also, the government is looking for easing the conditions. Even in the digital sector, FDI. So Indian government is looking for more and more FDI. Why this is so much emphasis on capital then?
Two reasons. First of all, I always hold the belief, and which I was discussing earlier, is that first of all, we don't use our labor adequately. Today in 21st century, look at the top 10 companies of the world. None of them hold capital. They hold brain. Facebook, Google, OYO, Airbnb, companies like any company you can think of, they are essentially brains. Today, any entrepreneur can create a brilliant company without the need for any capital if she or he simply has the smarts. It wasn't possible earlier. And with all the capital in the world, IBM is on a downturn. They have got massive capital. GE has got massive stores of capital, but nobody to use it because they don't have a good productive idea. People today, for instance, the young people do not want the cars. They want experience. They still want the good life, but they want life in a different way in which the role of ideational companies is much more interesting. For instance, they can spend hours and days speaking on Facebook, but they might not feel great about going out to stay, to drive a car from point A to point B. They've done that. They aren't particularly interested. Now, that means that the role of labor itself has split. There's now labor which produces capital. There's labor which is not able to produce capital. So, capital per se is not a very relevant thing. And countries like India, to answer your question of why they are still asking for capital, well, it's free. It's available at cheap cost. Why do you think India was asking for sovereign bond? Because it's so easy to raise capital from the world market now. No countries need to be particularly concerned because countries are awash with capital. Look at a country like, say, Britain. It has got massive amounts of capital. A country like, say, Germany, it's going to face recession. Is it because of shortage of capital? No, because it's run out of good productive ideas. This is the problem that is facing the world economies.
Yeah, so in a market-driven economy, as you said, where brain is more important, the human factor is more important. So, what is the role of the state in this kind of scenario? If you can answer it in the context of India, the role that the government of India is happening. I mean, whether it's the role of the Reserve Bank, whether it's the role of the Finance Ministry, whether it's the role of the regulation or massive regulation, despite all relaxation in India, there is massive regulation is still, and everything starts from the government and is finished with the government. Why such a dominant role of the state in these conditions?
So, there's, let me put it as an example. Supposing today there's a soccer match going on between France and Germany, or say France and Brazil. Where will you get the referee? You will get the referee from an equally powerful country like England or Argentina or Spain. Why? Because that referee will have the knowledge to be able to run a match like that. You won't get a referee from say Vietnam or even from India, because that referee would not have played in the skills level. So, the answer to your question is that as an economy gets more sophisticated, and it does not matter whether it is a market economy or any economy, as an economy gets more sophisticated, regulators need to get more sophisticated. Countries like in developing countries, even India, have not over the years made their referees more sophisticated. If we want our football matches to be of a higher standard, we also need the referees to be of a higher standard. So, SEBI has to be a smarter RBI has to be a smarter RBI, and let us break it down to a very simple level. This might look absurd. What is the basic rule of a country? A basic rule of a country is to ensure its defense, its borders are kept safe, its law and order work safe. Let me look at the role of police. This is often marginalized. You know, we get these district magistrates and others saying, I'll do this development and I'll do that development. What they don't realize is if they can keep the police efficient, lots of women will come out of their villages, homes and work 24 hours. Gender justice depends on policing. Gender justice depends on proper education, depends on good policing. Policing in cities and policing in most of the parts of India which are good, which are densely populated, is so inadequate. How will people respond and do business and do good work if they are not sure that their property will be properly worked on? Let us look at the railway station in Delhi. The fact that we see chaos there is not because somebody has imposed the chaos, it is because the policing is unsmart.
So, this means, I mean, if
so the basic rules of the police, basic rules of the state, if that is done, a lot of work will be done. Let the state think about development later on. Let us first get its basic policing, and the second part of it is ensuring justice is done fast. If somebody violates the police rules, the person should be hauled up and put in jail or given whatever the punishment.
This means whatever conditions, good or bad, I mean economically, wherever we stand in India these days, these are more, you can say, are the issues related to governance or to public policy or the execution of the public policy. What factor is more
execution. We don't need more new policies. We need to implement the same policies. What is the policy that you need in a judiciary? Judges simply need to be present in courts and hand down judgments, fast, reliable, efficient. People look at the benefit that the country will get.
So how do you assess the regulation part or the policy execution part that has been happening in India by the political masters, whichever party or whichever government has been there for the last 10 years? How do you assess their performance?
Why only 10 years? Let us take a simple case. You and I, we both stay in NCR region. How many drains are properly run, are clean? Before monsoons, they all get clogged up. What sort of policy is required to make a drain clean? Nothing. It simply means that the officer concerned along with his sweepers should be there to clean the drains regularly. It is something which is obvious, which means it is basically a question of implementation. Our officers love, our political guys love to create policies. Naya drain cleaning policy aa jayega, or there will be something like new machines for it. Nothing of the sort. You simply need to ensure that every day the drain stays clean. People on the road will then be able to travel on the vehicles, and the poor people will be helped the most. Remember, the poor people do not travel in cars, they walk on the roads. The water hits them, they carry the infection. Cleaning of the road, cleaning of the drain is something that is of paramount importance to the poorest person. He doesn't have a chance to escape from the road. I can get into a car and move away. The state, whenever it abdicates its basic responsibility, it hits the poorest the most. The poorest woman needs the police security to travel. My wife may not need it. She's got the car. Therefore, when the state abdicates this basic responsibility and implementation, it takes cover under grandiose schemes and names. I don't like that state.
You are very optimistic in your approach, and you always look forward that there will be a bright future ahead. But otherwise, if you look at the Indian economy critically, what do you look at? What is going to happen in the years to come?
Well, one of the things is that Indian economy, no matter whoever is in power, has been doing well. The point is, what is it that who are the people who are doing well? It was the holders of capital, which ensured that the people who were not the holders of capital, they were getting a raw deal. I would like the government, therefore, and I'm frankly speaking, I'm not sure whether I'm optimist. I'm simply saying that I like to cut the stupid, the verbiage which policymakers make of saying that we will do this policy and that policy. I like it when they keep it simple. When it's kept simple, things function. And typically you would see, when things are kept simple, they function well. When things are cluttered up, you get all sorts of bad results. So governments, if the governments are able, and if this government has got a massive majority, if they are able to keep it simple, not come up with too many policies, not come up with these centrally sponsored schemes, I would think that's fine. I don't care if they are taking money from this part to this part, as long as they know what to do with that money. And that's about as simple as it gets. Governments are not meant, technical people will keep it on. Making people do open defecation free, it was one of the biggest experiment. How complicated was the policy? Did it even need a policy? It wasn't. You just said that I have the need for latrines and people need to be put in. Nudge economics, that's it. If it can be done, fair enough.
So thank you very much, Shubhmoy, for participating, for talking to us, for enlightening to our viewers of DME TV. So this was Shubhmoy Bhattacharjee, who was talking to us as part of the program DME Dialogue, and he told us a lot of things, particularly that we have to keep the things simple, we have to make implementation faster so that we can grow fast as a country, as the world. So thank you all in this program for today. This was DME TV, and thank you for watching this program.